we looked at the properties of causality and stability. Just to recap, so we already know that for a causal sequence, the set transform ROC is outside the outermost pole of the pole with the maximum magnitude, and if uh, you include the condition of stability, then that ROC has to include the unit circle. So this is the slide. Can you all see the slide? Let me put it in the full screen mode. So if you see here, the ROC is the exterior of a circle outside the outermost pole, and the system function order of the numerator cannot be greater than the order of the denominators. That means it should be a proper rational function. And causality means that h of n in time domain is 0 for n less than 0. Therefore, it is a right-handed signal. So that is the condition. And stability means that the impulse response has to be absolutely summable. So in this case, the Fourier transform will converge, and the ROC must include the unit circle. So let us look at the idea of causality plus stability. So a causal LTI system with rational system function Hz is stable if and only if all the poles of H of Z lie inside the unit circle. That is, they must have all magnitude smaller than 1, and the ROC extends beyond the outermost pole, which includes the unit circle. So if all the poles lie inside the unit circle, then the biggest pole, the ROC extends beyond that. Then, and of course, it doesn't include that maximum pole or the outermost pole. ROC never includes poles. So this is the idea of a causal plus stable system. So we had looked at these small examples. This is another example that I've taken from Oppenheim and Schaefer. So it has all the concepts of stability, causality, and so let us think about some pole zero distributions, and let us think about the ROC and whether the conditions of stability and causality are satisfied for different ROCs or not. I think all of you are able to see this slide. This is a nice example. Yes, everyone is able to see?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So let us look at this example. So we have an impulse response h of n for which the system function is h of z and it has a pole zero plot shown in the figure. There are three possible ROCs that you can create for this pole zero plot. So if you see here, there are two poles and two zeros at the origin. So suppose we have the additional condition that the system is stable or h of n is absolutely summable and has a Fourier transform, then the ROC must include the unit circle. So stability condition will imply that ROC is the region mod z greater than half and less than 2. Okay. So because only in that case you will have the unit circle included in the ROC. Otherwise, if you have a situation where the system is right-sided or h of n is right-sided or causal, then the ROC would be the region mod z greater than 2. For stability, you cannot have right-handedness because your ROC has to include unit circle and one of the poles is lying on this side. So mod z should be greater than half, less than 2. So that is the only way you can have stability. So that sequence will be a non-causal sequence. So if it is a causal sequence, then it is an unstable sequence because for a for causality condition, mod z has to be greater than 2. In that case, it doesn't include the unit circle. So system would not be stable. So for this pole zero plot, there is no ROC, which would imply that the system is both stable and causal. So this additional condition of stability puts restrictions on signals. So let us now move into the next part of the, before I go there, let us look at this. The next part of the chapter would be calculating the inverse Z transform. The inverse Z transform can be calculated in many ways, and we will look at 3 different ways. And in the course, we are going to do only 2 ways. So there are actually 3 different ways for finding the inverse Z transform. So before I go there, a small slide showing the connection between DTFT and Z transform. This is important. That's why I wanted to bring this slide. So we have this bilateral Z transform, x of n into z to the power minus n. And just to clarify the notation, we are using a subscript z here. All of you can see my cursor, right? So there is a z here in the subscript. So if you want to calculate the DTFT from the Z transform, you have to make a substitution, Z equal to e to the power j omega. That is, you're assuming that the ROC of this guy includes the unit circle and it converges on the unit circle. So h of n is supposed to be absolutely summable and the Fourier transform exists. So if you replace Z equal to e to the power j omega in this equation, you get this equation where you have the DTFT. So ROC must include unit circle, only then the DTFT will exist. Otherwise, DTFT doesn't exist. You can have a Z transform for a signal whose Fourier transform does not exist. Okay. So that you should understand that Z transform is more general than Fourier transform. So the sum on the right hand side of the previous equation of this particular equation will converge for Z equal to e to the power j omega, which means that the unit circle characterized by mod z equal to 1 lies in the ROC for xz of z. Otherwise, it has no meaning. So if the left hand side of this is supposed to converge, then the right hand side is supposed to be less than infinity for all values of z on the unit circle. So if you put z equal to e to the power j omega in the z transform, bilateral z transform expression, you will get the DTFT x omega only when the ROC for xz includes the unit circle. So this implies that x of n is absolutely summable. And if the ROC of xz of z excludes the unit circle, that is, this condition is not satisfied, then it means that the DTFT cannot be calculated. So DTFT like can be calculated for mostly decaying functions. So for non-decaying functions, this condition is satisfied. That means the expression that you calculate is not DTFT. So h of n, if it is absolutely summable, then you get a system transfer function which can be evaluated on the unit circle. So you get the frequency response of the system. So whatever we just did was for x of n can be extended to h of n, the impulse response of the systems. Then you can also have the frequency response from the Z transform. So the Z transform can give us the frequency response or the DTFT of the impulse response of an LTI system. So that way the Z transform is useful and more general than the DTFT. So let us now move to inverse Z transforms. So this is the next part of the chapter, and with this I will end the chapter. So let me cover inverse Z transform. So you can have 3 different ways to calculate the inverse Z transform. The first one is what is called the contour integral, the direct expression for calculating the inverse Z transform. That is the contour integral. The second way to calculate Z transform, inverse Z transform, is by doing direct division. That means if you have the uh, system function expressed or x of z expressed in terms of a rational function of polynomials, then you can uh, go ahead and divide by long division the numerator by the denominator, and you can calculate out the inverse Z transform. So that is called synthetic division. So that is one way by which you can calculate the Z transform, but that is a tedious way, and sometimes it is not possible to use long division. So generally we will try to avoid this. So the most popular way to do inverse Z transform is by the use of partial fractions. Just like you would have come across partial fractions while doing Laplace transforms. So similarly, we will use partial fractions to calculate the inverse transform. So in this example, we have two polynomials, one in the numerator and another in the denominator. And there is a small example given here. So we try to do the inverse transform by synthetic division. That means we will divide the numerator by the denominator by long division. One extra thing that is given to you is the ROC. So the ROC say is something like this. It includes the unit circle, so it is a stable system. So let us see how we can divide the numerator by the denominator. So you can directly do this by long division. So if you multiply 1 with the entire denominator, then you just get here like this, subtract, so z cube goes away, you have something like 0.4 z to the power 2, then something like this here. Then you try to again multiply 0.4 into z inverse with this whole thing. So you will get this expression. I think there is a mistake here. It should be minus 0.5 z. So it should be minus 0.5 z here. So you will get an expression on the top here. So this expression you can use to calculate the inverse transform. So the inverse transform is given as the inverse transform of this guy. Okay. So that polynomial, that rational function of two polynomials, you have converted into a single polynomial. So that single polynomial h of z inverse the transform you can calculate like this. Okay. So some of you might think that what if I flip this guy and keep 0.008 in the front, then 0.34 z, then minus 0.5 z square, and then plus z cube, and similarly flip this guy, then what happens? Like, is there a rule that we should not flip or something like that? So let us see that. I think this is clear. This long division.
Yes.
This works only when you are given a rational function of two polynomials. So we could have done the synthetic division in this way also. So we have flipped both the numerator and the denominator, and you are again trying to divide. So you try to eliminate term by term, and you reach this expression. So if you reach this expression, you can directly use the lookup table and calculate the inverse transform. So that will come out something like this. Now, the additional restriction that you had in the question was that the ROC includes the unit circle, or the ROC is beyond mod z greater than 0.8. So this particular signal is what kind of a signal? Anyone?
Non-causal.
Yeah, it is non-causal because it exists on the left-hand side. It doesn't exist on the right-hand side. Okay. Delta of n plus 1, delta of n plus 2, all of that exists only on the left-hand side of the origin. So it is a non-causal signal. The non-causal signal will not have an ROC like this. So in the question you are given that the ROC was mod z greater than 0.8. So that means you should not divide in this way, but you should actually do this type of long division. So we will generally not adopt this form of the inverse transform calculation, the most popular way to do inverse Z transform is to use partial fractions. So this is the conclusion that I'm just showing here. So the second case, ROC should be mod Z less than 0.2. That is the innermost pole. Okay. One more reason is that why you don't do long division is that the result is not in a closed form. That means the result is in the form of a series. Okay. And the series is extending to infinity. So it is not in a compact closed form. So that is one of the reasons that you don't use long division. Okay. So partial fractions is the most popular way. So before we apply partial fractions, we have to make sure that the order of the denominator is greater than the order of the numerator. Okay. That is the catch. So if it is an improper rational function, then what should we do? So the solution is to divide first the numerator by the denominator and make it a proper rational function. Okay. So if you divide both the sides by here the number of zeros and the number of poles are the same. So what we do is we make the numerator one order less than the denominator. So we divide the left hand side by z. So then the right hand side will also get divided by z, and therefore you will have the denominator one order less than the one order more than the numerator. So let's see. So divide both sides by z, you get z to the power n minus m minus 1. And you have this factored numerator and factored denominator. So now the fraction is proper in z, can be expanded in terms of partial fractions. So these are simple poles and distinct poles. So you can write it in terms of this sum, and at the end you can multiply again the z term on the right hand side. So you will get something like this. So we know that this has a z transform expression, closed form expression. So z by z minus p1 is inverse z transform is p1 to the power n u of n. So this is a closed form expression, and it is not in the form of a series. So this way you obtain the inverse z transform. So you get back the impulse response. So this is the simple case where like we have just seen that to do partial fraction expansion, we have to bring the rational function in terms of a proper rational function. That means the numerator order should be less than the denominator, and then you can expand it out using the partial fraction technique and take the inverse transform of the individual terms and get the inverse transform of the left hand side. So before I go to actual examples with Z transforms with partial fractions or inverse Z transform with partial fractions, let me just introduce this topic, which is unilateral Z transform. I had just touched upon this. I'd given a definition of the unilateral Z transform because we'll do some examples with unilateral Z transform also. So let me again go back to this small topic. So generally we are mostly dealing with causal signals in practice because we deal with signals which are physically realizable. So physically realizable signals are causal signals. So if you have the restriction of causality, then the Z transform will start from 0, okay, 0 to infinity, x of n into z to the power minus n. So that is a unilateral Z transform. And so the only difference between the bilateral Z transform and the unilateral Z transform is this lower limit, which is in the bilateral case it is minus infinity. Here it is 0. So just for notation, making it sure that you are applying the unilateral Z transform, you have a subscript u here. So this means that you are applying Z transform expression from 0 to infinity. So this is our table of common Z transform pairs. So I think you have become familiar with this. So you already know the expressions. So if you see here, it is gamma to the power n minus 1. Therefore, it is 1 by z minus gamma. Okay. If it was gamma to the power n u of n minus 1, no, sorry. If it was gamma to the power n minus 1, u of uh, minus n minus 1, then you would have the ROC mod z less than mod gamma. Okay. Right now it is you're applying the formula z minus 1 into z transform of xz. So it is z to the power minus 1 into z by z minus gamma. That turns out to be 1 by z minus gamma. Now this is the case for a double pole or double pole at gamma, z minus gamma whole square. So if you multiply n with gamma to the power n u of n, you get a double pole. Similarly, if you apply n square, you get a triple pole. And this is the general formula. So this you may not be aware. So sometimes this is also used while calculating inverse set transforms. And we will be getting familiar with this, guys, because we are going to use a lot complex exponentials as input to LTI systems, because our next chapter is about description of LTI systems in the transform domain, so in the Z domain or in the Fourier domain. So we are going to get familiar with these three formulas, rather mainly this formula and this formula, 8 and 11. And this guy is also important. So it is connected to these fellows. So those who are writing, they can make a note of these things. Later on, we'll be directly using this inverse transform pairs. I will solve one case where we are going to use this formula. I'll solve one more example, show one example where we'll use this formula. So those who are not aware, they can make a note of this. If you want me to zoom the slide, then I can zoom the slide. Do you want me to zoom the slide? Just hold on. Okay, can you see, all of you?
Yes, sir.
Maybe you can write from here. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So if you see here, this is a quadratic, and this quadratic will lead to complex poles. Are you able to see the cursor, everyone?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So you see the denominator is a quadratic in all these expressions. That's why I'm asking you to make a note of this, because there is an example which I'll show, where we'll factorize the denominator into complex poles, complex conjugate poles, and then we will calculate the inverse set transform. So if you have this formula handy, then you can understand. So the next chapter is going to be a critical one, because that is the one which has many concepts. And have you heard about like maximum phase, minimum phase systems? Have you been taught those things in control or somewhere? Anyone? Have those things been covered in control? Yeah, anyone? Have you heard about how to split a transfer function into various types of filters, or how to write a general rational transfer function h of z as a like sum or a product of various kinds of like pole zero combinations, so that you can have minimum phase or maximum phase? Have you heard about these terms? Anyone? If you have not, then we are going to learn that in the next topic. So that set of lectures will be critical. So I hope all of you have written these things down. So shall I go to the next slide? Yeah, are you hearing me?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Is Mohsin Kalim here? Muhammad Mohsin Kalim?
Yes, sir.
Muhammad Mohsin, what happened? You did not write your class test? You were absent?
Yes, sir. I actually missed my class test because I wasn't here. I was in the service center to get my laptop since I didn't had my laptop with myself. So
Uh, then you will not be able to get marks for that class test.
yes, like actually I have just mailed you regarding the issue.
No, I cannot give you a retest for this reason. Okay.
Like
I can only give a retest for people who have a medical reason. I can't entertain this reason. So I was like worried that one of the files was missing in the Google folder. So I started looking at like who was not there. And then like you should have mailed me earlier also. Like I did a lot of work to find you out from the bunch of people who were not who were writing the exam. So I had to look at the Excel sheet and actually search you out. So for that kind of a reason, I cannot give you a retest. So you'll lose marks. Okay. So let us see. So these are the identities that you must have noted by now. So let me move forward. And some of you have not written your roll numbers correctly. So Snehalata Singh, your roll number is not correct in the file name. So don't make such mistakes. Otherwise, like I can also get confused and give wrong marks to people. Okay. So some more identities. Now all these are for most of these are for the case of bilateral Z transform. If you see the ROC mod Z for the previous slide were all greater than mod gamma or 1, and if you see here, all these are mostly for bilateral Z transform. There are some for which mod Z is less than 1. For example, this guy minus U of minus n minus 1. So this is the left-sided unit step sequence. Similarly, non-causal signal mod Z less than mod gamma, and here the double pole. So for the unilateral Z transform, the specification of the ROC is unnecessary. Okay, because it only exists for n equal to 0 to infinity. So you assume that it is a right-handed signal. So the ROC has to be mod Z greater than the outermost pole. So the ROC is redundant for unilateral Z transform. So particularly there can be confusing ROCs or confusing Z transform expressions because the signal can be either causal or non-causal. So depending on that, you will have the ROC. But for the case of causal signal, you already know that signal is causal, so ROC is redundant. ROC is not required. So with this, let me get into the examples. So the first example, so I've taken this material from the BP Lathi book. So if you see the first example, the inverse unilateral Z transform by partial fraction expansion. So there are three different rational functions, polynomials, and we can see that here these are distinct poles. This is a repeated pole, and here you have a quadratic. Okay, so there are three different types of denominators given. So for the case of simple poles, it is straightforward to calculate the inverse of the partial fractions. So you can split this expression into this, where you calculate these residues. So nowadays in MATLAB, you can calculate the residues using a function in MATLAB, or you can use the normal way to calculate partial fractions. That means you cover this guy and put z equal to 3, then you will get the term with z minus 3 as the denominator. I'll just show you like how that is done. So if it is unilateral Z transform, then you need not give the ROC. So it means that the ROC is always greater than the outermost pole. So the outermost pole is 3. So there are two poles, 2 and 3. And the outermost one, or the one which is having a maximum magnitude, is 3. So the ROC has to be greater than 3. R mod Z is greater than 3. So then you can simply write it out. So here it is. So this is 3 by Z minus 2. So ideally you should have something like 3 into Z by Z minus 2. That will have the form of 2 to the power n U of n. So because Z is missing in the numerator, so you will assume that you have so you're using that Z inverse into Z. So that is the reason why you will have something like 2 to the power n minus 1. If you see, this is the particular case, 1 by Z minus gamma. Gamma to the power n minus 1, U of n minus 1. So here it is U of minus n, sorry, U of n minus 1, because this is causal case. So U of n minus 1. So you see, this is the output, 2 to the power n minus 1 or gamma to the power n minus 1 into U of n minus 1. So this is the inverse expression. So this has a disadvantage that you have an answer that is multiplied by U of n minus 1. Such a form is not natural and inconvenient, and therefore we want U of n instead of U of n minus 1. So then we don't do the splitting like this. We split XAZ divided by Z. Okay. So we split XAZ divided by Z. So again, you find the partial fractions. They are not the same as the previous case partial fractions. So you will get this set of residues, and this will be the denominator. So you are dividing the denominator by z. So you are introducing another pole. So that's why you have z here, then z minus 2 and z minus 3. So finally, when you calculate the inverse term by term, you will multiply z with all the terms on the right hand side and the left hand side. So you'll be left with this, and this will be the final inverse Z transform. So here you have Z by Z minus 2 and Z by Z minus 3. So you will have like this form, gamma to the power n u of n. So is this understood by everyone? The previous case, we did not divide by Z. We just split the right hand side like this. We did not divide by Z. So if you calculate individually the inverse Z transform, you will get n to the power gamma to the power n minus 1 and u of n minus 1 using this particular identity here. Clear?
Yes.
So suppose you don't want u of n minus 1, you want u of n, then you will divide xyz by z. So here you will get a 1 by z on the right hand side. So you will have three poles, one at origin, then another at 2 and another 3. So that you will again find the partial fractions. So those residues turn out to be these, and then individually you will take out the inverse Z transform after multiplication of z on both the sides. Okay. Okay, so let me take the other two examples in the next class. So today I'm just ending this class. So tomorrow we'll again meet at 6 o'clock. We'll do the other examples and we'll try to wind up this Z transform chapter tomorrow. So is it okay, everyone? So shall I end the meeting, everyone? Okay, we'll meet tomorrow at 6 o'clock.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.